Imagine putting in the work to find your mentors and then finding yourself in a situation where you have no support at all because they are suddenly no longer available. Or worse yet, maybe you don't have any mentors and you're not sure how to find one. We have seen so many clients develop too few mentors, only to be left with no support when they leave the company, often all at once before a restructuring. So we'd like to help you to find the mentors that are right for you and nurture those relationships to position yourself in the best way. You'll want to stay until the end to find out the traps that you want to stay out of as well. I'm Jill Avey, a career success coach, and this is SisterSmart Leadership, the show that explores how women can rise from director to vice president and beyond by fully leaning into their feminine energy as their biggest advantage. Let's get you one step closer to the recognition and promotion you deserve. Mentorship can be tricky. Some companies have formal programs and others have none. Regardless of the formal support system, mentorship is something that you need to take charge of to set yourself up for success. SisterSmart Coach Sarah is here with me to talk about this important topic. So Sarah, will you start us out with discussing what the limiting beliefs are that you hear when you come to mentorship?
Yeah. And I think you just pointed on one is that who's in the driver's seat when it comes to mentorship, right? And that definitely is the mentee. And so mentorship it's a reciprocal relationship. It facilitates the pairing of a more experienced individual with a less experienced one, the mentee. And that's really to provide the guidance and support, the knowledge transfer, the network, and sometimes the possibility of opening doors for someone else, right? And so that first step is checking out the limiting beliefs. And I know on Sister Smart, we talk a lot about heightening your awareness onto what those beliefs are. And so you may find that you have a belief about maybe it's not my job to find a mentor, or I hear a lot with women that say, I don't have enough time to have a mentor, or maybe I already have enough friends that I talk to about these things, or I'm leaving that to the hands of my manager. Ooh, that's a red flag, right? Or I don't know where to start. I'm already overwhelmed. That falls back on the time piece. Or there's some beliefs that I'm at an age where maybe I'm too old to find a mentor, or I have one already and one is enough. So all of those can be limiting beliefs to challenge you to even take that next step into mentorship. And so step one is really to identify, especially if you've been thinking about having a mentor or you've been thinking about specific goals that you want to achieve in your role. Maybe the first step is just to check in on what are those beliefs that you have about mentorship. Now we're going to go to step two, creating a plan, right? So we've already identified some limiting beliefs and maybe that you're beginning to want a mentor, right? So I just want to point you back to episode 33 and the Sister Smart podcast series, because that's where Jill goes over your personal board of directors. And then you can identify who do you want on your bench? And you can really identify your needs for that personal board of directors. So now there's that opening for mentoring. Step two, creating a plan. First, you want to identify your goals. What do you actually want to get out of mentorship? Do you want that new role, promotion? Maybe it's more visibility or understanding more of the strategy at a different level, or connecting with those that you're working with or sidelined to that you want to get more support from and build a relationship. And so really think about what's important about this mentor inside of your network, because your mentor is not only going to give you their viewpoint and a roadmap and help you focusing on different things. So really think through what are the needs. And Jill, anything that you want to add to step two with creating their plan?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is what they can offer you, but I also think it's important to be clear on what they're not going to be able to offer you, because every mentor is only going to be able to give you their experience. That's the beauty of a mentor relationship, is that you're learning from somebody else and that knowledge transfer that you mentioned. So it's good to be clear on this mentor can't provide me everything. And so what can they help me with? And then that way you can narrow your focus to those topics. And it creates a more rewarding relationship for everybody.
Great, Jill. Thank you for adding that. And now let's move on to step three, identifying the mentor. So Jill, would you like to talk more about identifying who that is for the mentee?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about internal mentors and external mentors, we want to have both. And so a place that I love to start is internally. Who are the people that you want to hook up with and have that stronger relationship with? And so I always start with senior leaders who are tangential to the work that you do. So your work impacts them, and therefore they have motivation to help you rise up and be better at your job, because that's going to help them be better at their jobs. And you're going to understand how to be able to reciprocate with them more because you're understanding the work that they do. So that is the first step, is to see who internally can benefit from this mentor relationship. And then externally, we want to have both. Again, this is how you get left without any mentors, is when you only have internal mentors. So you've got to have external ones too. And so where my mind goes with that is finding people who are invested in you. There have been champions along the way that have wanted to help you, that have believed in your abilities and that want to help you shine and are behind you. And so having those people around you is really powerful. I have one mentor who is purely my cheerleader. He helped me a lot when we worked together in a past company, and we kept that relationship going. And it's super valuable to me to have that one person who is always so enthusiastic about what I'm doing and 100% behind me. So it doesn't even have to be somebody who has a technical knowledge that you need, or sometimes we just need a cheerleader, but it's also helpful to find somebody in your field that can help you with seeing where the industry is going, and that kind of building your vision work as well can be really helpful from the outside, because sometimes people from the outside can help you think more creatively, and they may be in touch with other external factors that you're not seeing from the inside of your company. Who else would you add to that on how to identify mentors, Sarah?
I think those are two really great points, the internal and the external. And then you also touched on like the technical and the non-technical, right? Building that vision. I'm reminded that we don't need just one mentor. So I think we can sometimes get pigeonholed, like I have one and that's good enough, but perhaps and this goes back to identifying your needs from the mentor. And that's going to help you identify who that mentor is.
Yeah, Sarah. And I've seen clients that have just a handful of mentors, maybe 4 to 6. But I've also seen clients that have many mentors, even a couple dozen, because they're just touching base with them at a different interval. So we can really start to expand our vision of what mentorship can be and how many influences and the kind of support system that we could really have.
Yeah, I love that, because mentorship is unique to the individual. There really isn't one cookie cutter way to do it.
Exactly. That's great. So when you find your mentor, our step 4 is cultivating that relationship. And so thinking about if it's an informal or a formal relationship can be really important. And sometimes it's really awkward when somebody just approaches you and you've never met them before and they're like, will you be my mentor? And so it's better to maybe start out as an informal relationship when it's not a company sponsored program, and maybe just invite them out to coffee and see if you click first, because that's a really important piece. And so, Sarah, how would that work in your mind?
Yeah, I love that. Because when we hear that question, like, will you be my mentor? There's a little bit of expectation that comes with it. So the mentor may be thinking like, I have to do all of this. I don't know this person. So maybe holding off in the beginning to formalize it, creating like an implied mentorship and a reciprocal relationship. Whereas you're coming prepared with some specific questions to talk about and with an outcome. And the conversation just begins more naturally. And then you can wait to formalize it later. Like if we want to think about developing them into a sponsor, right? That's another topic. But starting with just the informal relationship, I feel like that's sometimes more appropriate at the beginning. And so you can really build a relationship with them. They can get to know you. You can get to know them at a personal level, and then start to bring in like what it is that you want to work on with your career. Any other thoughts?
I think it's important to remember what you just were talking about, that this is a relationship and that we do want to bring a little of ourselves to the relationship and get to know them as a person too, and make sure that you're connecting, because that's an important piece for having the mentorship go deeper, potentially getting developed into a sponsor relationship as well. And that there are also some mentors that's not going to happen with, and you may just check in with them maybe just a half-hour conversation once or twice a year could also be a very beneficial mentor relationship that's always going to stay informal. So I think just having some flexibility and freedom in how you're thinking about this relationship can be really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is a really good point to go back to when you are in these conversations, checking back in with those beliefs. Like maybe there's a thought pattern that continues to come up about your belief around mentoring that needs to be reframed. And we talk a lot about reframing and the SisterSmart program. So I just want to touch on that. Now that you're in the activity of engaging in the relationship, some thoughts may come up. And how do you want to manage those?
Yeah, absolutely. Always checking back into limiting beliefs is important. Okay, so that brings us to our step 5 is, okay, we have the relationship, but what do we talk about? And that is always such a big deal for so many of our clients is how do we create the actual conversations and get the information that we want to get? So where do you start with that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's really important to use, there's models of networking, right? So think about your networking. You want to get to know them. So you might bring in some of these communication tips like form, talking to them about their family, their work, what they like to do for fun, and what brings meaning to their life. And then also to bring back to what did you want to get out of the mentorship? So we want to really be able to articulate what you need and how they can support you. So make sure you're driving the conversation. You've got targeted conversation after building that relationship, and it's in alignment with your vision and where you want to go. And you can always ask them to, like, any tips at the end of the conversation, any tips that they would recommend that you do in your role now to help get you to where you want to go. So you really want to come prepared and have that, especially the initial few conversations, to be more thoughtful, right? Because you're, as the mentee, driving the conversation and driving the relationship in the beginning. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Jill?
I also think it's important to have an agenda and have thought through strategically what is it that you want to talk about that day and give those questions to them ahead of time so they can think about it ahead of time if they want to. Some people like to have that runway, and thinking about what can I bring to the relationship as well. So it's not only about asking for information from them, but it's also about understanding it's a reciprocal relationship and that you need to provide something to them so that they enjoy the relationship too. And a lot of my clients will ask, like, I'm at a lower level, what could I possibly do for this person? And one of the first things I always go to is, you know, the higher up you get, the harder it is to know what's going on in the front lines. And so maybe you can bring information to them about what's happening and what you're seeing. And that can be extremely helpful for them. And as you get to know them, you might also understand some topics that they're hot on. So you could maybe share an article that you read or things like that that might help them. Because who has enough time to be learning everything they need to know? As well, there may be something in your background that you've done beyond this current role that they might be interested in learning more about. So really finding out what they want to learn that supports their role can really help you to do that reciprocal work, which often is kind of a sticking point for people.
Yeah, I love that because our mentors are investing time in us. They want you to be a good investment. So I think one other thing in addition to that is also to follow up with them. To let them know, like, how did you use their tools or techniques, or how did you use the conversation to improve yourself? Think of it as, that I love that reciprocity and bringing that reciprocal inspiration back by sharing the impact that their mentorship has had in you. So I love
think that's really
tips.
important in being a good mentee, is showing that you took their advice and that you made good on this relationship and the effort that they're putting in with you.
Yeah.
There's also some traps that we can fall into when we're talking to our mentor. And one of the things that I hear is a lot of times people will come to their mentors, particularly internal mentors we want to avoid this with, is coming to them to help them solve your problems. So it's a sales process, not a therapy session. That's something to remember, is internally you are always selling them on how great you are and all of the good work that you're doing, and you're getting feedback and advice from them, not problem solving, because you really don't want to be coming to them as the person with the problems all the time and that you are always having problems. You need to be talking about your successes as well and letting them, kind of keeping them up to date on the great work that you're doing. And then you can use the problem solving conversations with your external mentors who aren't going to be the people who are speaking up for you in a hiring conversation. It's those conversations that are happening in the rooms where you're not present that you want to be preparing your mentors to be able to speak highly of you. And so you only have so much time with them and you want to be really focused on that piece. So what are some other traps that you see, Sarah?
Another trap that I've seen people fall into is that there's a belief that they can only have one mentor. Like it might create some competition across the organization or some perceptions. And so one good way to get around that is perhaps talk with your manager, help them co-create the solution of finding you mentors that could support you and have a conversation with them. Who would really benefit me here? And then they get to be part of that solution with you.
Fantastic. I think another trap is also thinking that the mentor drives the relationship. And that it's funny, sometimes people just kind of come to the conversation and show up and they're not sure what to talk about. And so it's really not their job to figure out what to talk about. It's your job. And so always keeping that in mind, that I'm the driver of this relationship.
Yeah, so important.
So how do we be a good mentee? I think this is an important piece, is how to be a really good mentee, because that builds that relationship and it makes people want to invest in you. Sarah, what are your thoughts on that?
So just some tips on being a great mentee is, one, making sure you're enjoying the conversation, they're enjoying the conversation, right? There's that reciprocity and flow, making sure that you've thoughtfully shown up for the conversation. And perhaps, as Jill mentioned, send them some things if that's their style in advance. So the conversation is very useful, and making sure you follow up with your mentor on what worked well and what you used from the conversation. That's so important. That's going to give them so much joy, right? To know that their conversation and their mentorship is having an impact on you. And also to know that it's more of a hierarchical structure when we think about mentorship. Like we have a mentor and then a mentee, and we're on different levels versus like more of that flat line. And so just knowing that this is also a professional relationship. It can definitely turn into a friendship with time, but in the beginning, when you're first getting started, know to bring that professionalism to the relationship as well. Jill, anything else that you'd like to add?
I think just doing good on the advice, being somebody that's worth investing in because you use it and you really put it into play. Because one of the most, we were talking about this, that we've all known people who you give them advice and then they completely ignore you. And you're like, why did I waste my breath? And we were talking about this with friends earlier, Sarah, and you may have friends that don't ever take your advice. And then you have friends that try out the stuff that you suggest. And it's so rewarding when they do that. And so that's what we want to take into our mentor relationships, is really giving it a good shot of what they're recommending and coming back and circling back to them and telling them about roadblocks that you ran into, why it didn't work or how well it worked. And either way, it's showing that you're really using their time well and using it in good faith.
Yeah, I love those tips.
Such a great conversation we've had, Sarah, about mentorship, and we've covered so many different topics around it that I hope that our listeners will get so much value from. We always like to end each episode with the 3 shifts that you can make today. Our first one is to think about, do you have a mentor? And if you do, a mentor or mentors, if you do have a mentor, assess the relationships and see how well are these relationships going? And what did you learn from this episode that you could use to further deepen those relationships, to get more out of them and to reciprocate more? And then thinking about, what other mentors do you need? Our second shift is assessing yourself as a mentee. So what is your mentee brand, and how are you showing up in alignment with how you want to be perceived?
And then the third shift is to notice how you're being in these relationships. Is it ideally how you want to show up as a leader and a mentee? And just take these tips, and maybe there's one habit that you'd like to change, or there's some habit that would support you in this relationship and building it more effectively. So taking some time to self-reflect. how you're showing up as a mentee.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. So what is your next step to strengthen your mentor network? Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And download our checklist for what to look for in a mentor so you can start expanding your mentor network today. There's a link in the show notes to download that. And if you want to dive deeper into women's leadership and how to move up in your career, subscribe either on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We're on a mission to help more women get into leadership and stay there. And if that's aligned with you, we'd love to have you be part of this community and tune into more episodes on SisterSmart Leadership that will support you in becoming the leader you want to be. If you're ready to fully lean into your feminine leadership and get promoted from director to vice president and beyond, hit that subscribe button so you'll get all the episodes to come. And check out the recommended video here to see how women are rising up without playing by the old rules that built these male-dominated industries and systems.